The electoral process. It's election time. Every 4 years, our country holds a presidential election. The candidates debate, hit the road talking to voters, and put advertisements on television, radio, and the internet. All this hard work actually starts months or even years before Election Day in November. So what does it take to go from a hopeful candidate to a victorious president? The first step a candidate has to take is to declare to the nation that he or she wants to be president. Then candidates must get support for their campaign, raise money, and get attention of the leaders of his or her political party. Narrowing the field. Candidates for the larger political parties are chosen at party meetings called conventions. The parties hold conventions at the local, state, and national levels. There are two main ways the states send people to the national convention: the caucus and the primary. Both methods result in a set of delegates who will attend the national conventions. The delegates pledge that when they attend the convention, they will vote for the candidate the state political party supports. Question: what if the president runs for re-election? A. Answer: the nomination process still happens, but it is shorter because the incumbent rarely has anyone to run against. Here's the similarities between a caucus system and a primary election. In a caucus system, these are meetings where party leaders and supporters select candidates through discussions and consensus. When I lived in Colorado, this is what I did during the primaries before the 2016 election. And then there is a primary election. Elections host a secret ballot, and people vote for the candidate they want to represent their party in the national election. Caucuses are less common, primaries are more common, and as you can see by the Pennsylvania flag, that's what we have here in Pennsylvania. In both cases, party delegates from each state are sent to the national conventions to select the nominee. During an election season, Iowa hosts the first caucus of the season, and New Hampshire holds the first primary election. Both happen in early February. And the nominee is: each party holds its national conventions in huge arenas with balloons, confetti, funny-looking hats, and lots of media coverage. Delegates chosen from each state discuss and debate the candidates, listen to speeches, and help create the party platform. Near the end of the multi-day convention, the delegates cast their votes for the party's nominee, who will run in the national election. The presidential and vice presidential nominees each make an acceptance speech that is meant to bring the party together to support the nominees and forget about the months of debate and arguments that led up to their nomination. This is the first major step in getting the national campaign for president up and running. On the campaign trail, millions of dollars are spent in the months leading up to the national conventions, but that is just the beginning. Once the field is narrowed to the two main party candidates, fundraising becomes even more important. There are only a few months before the general election, and each candidate needs to get his or her message out to the American public. The parties in each state help the candidates with paying bills and organizing support. Get the word out. A political campaign is the process of gathering public support for a candidate. The goal of a campaign is to deliver as much information about the candidate and the party's platform to as many people as possible. Candidates campaign in a variety of ways, including direct mail, information sent directly to voters, personal appearances, radio and TV interviews, debates and speeches that a candidate can participate in, printed material, posters, bumper stickers, leaflets, buttons, t-shirts that people can buy or can be given so that they can display a candidate's message, and the internet. Email, websites, videos, blogs, and as we've really seen in 2016, 2017, 2018, social networking. Election Day. All of these efforts lead up to Election Day in November. People across the nation go to the polls and select which candidate they want for the next president. As polls close from state to state, the news media reports who is getting the most votes. The next morning, the media announces a winner of the popular vote, which is a tally of all the votes cast, but that is just one step in the process of electing the president. The Electoral College. The U.S. Constitution requires an extra step in the process of electing a president. This step is called the Electoral College. Each state has a group of people called electors who cast the actual votes for president. When people vote for a presidential candidate, they are really voting to decide which candidate the electors in their state will vote for. In December after the election, the electors meet in their state capitals and cast their ballots. The president of the Senate collects the votes and counts them. In order to win, a candidate must have an absolute majority of the electoral votes, which means more than half the votes. But what if there's a tie? If the electors' votes are split, then the full House of Representatives votes. If that results in a tie, the Senate votes. In the elections of 1800 and 1824, they both resulted in ties that were resolved by Congress. On January 20th, the president-elect and the vice president-elect take the oath of office and are inaugurated. You can find out how many electors your state has if you know how many representatives you have in Congress. Example, Illinois has 2 senators, like all states, and 18 members of the House of Representatives. 2 senators plus 18 representatives equals 20 electors. Pennsylvania happens to have the same number of electors. In an electoral college system, what happens is whenever a candidate wins your state, they get all of the electoral votes. So if somebody received 51% of the vote in Pennsylvania or 51% of the vote in Illinois, they will receive the full 20 electoral votes from that state. And this continues around the country, with each state having a different number of votes that are able to be won. And in the end, there are a total of 538 votes that are available. And if a candidate gets a majority of those, which would be 270, they win the election. Here's what you need to do to make sure you finish everything today. First thing, take the quiz. You know the deal. 3 questions, 6 points total. 1 point just for answering a question, 2 points for getting it right, 0 points for not getting it done on time. Open book, open note, and open internet. Find the answers where you need, but I recommend going back and listening to the video to find answers. Then we need to complete the review activities. They're checked for completion, and answers are provided on the following slides, along with guidance and instructions to find the correct answers. So make sure that you are following along with everything that happens on the next couple slides, and we get our work done on time. Like always, we have a short worksheet. What's the difference when there are elections for the U.S. Congress? Candidates for the Senate and House of Representatives have a smaller audience for their campaigns since they are elected by districts within a specific state. Congress also goes back to work earlier than the president. How do the processes compare? Compare this using this information and what you learned in this lesson. Complete the Venn diagram below with the letters from the list. So, in which ones do the candidates have to declare where they run for office? Well, both candidates are going to have to make a statement saying that they're running, so we're going to put A right there in the middle. B, political parties set their nominee at for the national election in primaries and caucuses. So the most important thing, they already underlined it for me, so I don't have to underline it again, is the word national. Remember, if we looked at what it said above, members of Congress are elected within their districts, so of course that one has to be the president. Figure out the remaining 3 on your own. B, recount. Occasionally, election results may end up very close, and a candidate may call for a recount of all the votes to make sure the winner actually is the winner. This happened in 2000 when Al Gore and George W. Bush ran for the presidency. The election came down to one state, Florida, where the votes were too close to call. Bush was declared the winner in Florida, but there were lots of problems with the ballots. Gore pushed the courts to allow a recount in Florida. Bush tried to prevent it. The Florida Supreme Court ruled there should be a recount in the districts where the ballots were in question. Bush questioned that ruling to the U.S. Supreme Court. Which controversial 5-4 decision did the Supreme Court make? Decision A, get those ballots out and count again. Bush ends up behind in the recount. Gore wins. Decision B, no recounts. The Florida Supreme Court can't order a recount in some districts of the state, but not others. There isn't enough time anyway. Bush wins. Decision C, recount all the votes in Florida, not just the messed up districts, fast. Bush takes more of a lead in the recount, and Gore concedes or gives up. Bush wins. For this one, go into Google and look up the 2000 election. Also, you can look up something called Bush v. Gore, which is the Supreme Court case that is talked about right here. Bush v. Gore. Look up both of those, and again, I apologize, you can't read my handwriting. 3 more quick activities. These ones should be a little straightforward than the last 2. D, vocabulary. Match the definitions in the word they described. Number 1, when a candidate states that he or she is planning to run for office. Is that a delegate, a nominee, a campaign, a declaration, or declare, a convention, or an acceptance speech? Well, if you are stating something, it can also be said that you are declaring something. So we're going to put a D there. Number 2, party meetings where candidates are selected and the platform is created. Well, we know it's not going to be declaration. It has to be one of the other ones. So we're looking at something that has to do with a meeting. Well, campaign seems likely, convention seems likely, but I don't think it's going to be delegate. That's a person who casts a vote. A nominee is somebody who is selected to run, and it doesn't say anything. Well, actually, it does say something. Maybe it could be nominee. A campaign, well, we know the campaign's the whole thing. Convention, that actually sounds a little bit better than the nominee, because if it were nominee, it would just be talking about that, but we're also creating the platform. I definitely don't think it's an acceptance speech, so I'm going to put an E right there. We're going to go with E. Work your way through the remaining 4 options. Something's missing. Fill in the paragraph with the correct terms in the word box. Every 4 years on Election Day, the American public elects the President of the United States. The first set of election results tallies the blank account of every vote cast. The results determine whom each state's blank will support when they meet and participate in the blank. In order to win, a candidate must have 270 out of a total of 538 electoral votes. This number is half of 538 plus 1, which is considered a blank. Okay, let's I'm going to give you one of these, and that's the one that will not fit on that line, so I'm just going to draw a line. The first one, the results of that popular vote, and I gave you that one too, will determine this where each state's electoral college votes go. Figure out the other 2 on your own. And the last one, whoops, a candidate made a to-do list for his run for the presidency, but he dropped it and everything got mixed up. Help him out by numbering the items so the list can be made to be put in the right order. So let's try to find the first one. Attend the national convention for my party. Hopefully I'll be nominated. Declare my candidacy. I want to be president and I hope my party will support me. Yay, I'm the nominee. As part of the national campaign, I'll make speeches, show up on TV, send out mailings, and attend rallies. Hang out with family and friends and await the results of the popular vote on Election Day. Wait for the results of the Electoral College and prepare my acceptance speech for the inauguration, or campaign for the primary and caucus season by making speeches and talking to voters. Well, I remember earlier the first thing I need to do is declare that I am running for president. So right here, we're going to declare our candidacy for number 1. After that, well, it could be the national convention, but there is something before the national convention, which is primary and caucus season. So I'm going to put a number 2 there. Once again, figure out those 4 on your own. And like always, if you are struggling, raise your hand. Don't just give up. Make sure that you are asking for help. If you finish all of this, that Win the White House game is exactly this. So make sure that you're playing around on that game too, because it is a good way to review how elections work.